I never thought my own brother could embarrass me so badly in public, especially over something as silly as my hotel room choice. He laughed in front of everyone at the lobby, calling me cheap, but he had no idea who I really was. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My brother, Troy, and I grew up in a wealthy family, but we were always at odds over small things. While he loved showing off and judging others, I quietly built my own path. I had worked for years in silence, eventually taking ownership of a hotel chain I inherited from my grandmother. But Troy didn't know any of this. That weekend, we went to a luxury hotel in Chicago. I chose a modest room because I didn't need to show off, but Troy couldn't resist mocking me in front of the lobby. He laughed, called me cheap, and even made jokes in front of other guests. I felt humiliated, but I stayed calm, hiding the fury building inside me. I excused myself to check in and called the hotel manager, Carter. He knew my secret and promised to help me handle Troy the right way. Moments later, while Troy was still boasting, Carter announced, "The owner of this hotel is here today." All eyes turned to me. Troy froze, his smirk fading into shock. I stepped forward calmly and let the truth sink in. Troy had finally realized I wasn't the sister he thought he knew. I didn't yell or gloat. I just let him see the result of his arrogance. That day, I learned that patience and quiet strength could turn betrayal into triumph. Lena and Troy grew up in a family where money always seemed to matter more than love. From an early age, Troy enjoyed showing off, always comparing himself to others and pointing out what he considered flaws. He loved attention and never missed a chance to make someone feel small, especially me. I, on the other hand, preferred to stay out of the spotlight. While he chased recognition, I focused on my own goals quietly, building something meaningful without needing anyone's approval. Over the years, I poured myself into the hotel business, learning every detail, making careful decisions, and growing a small chain that no one outside my circle knew about. It wasn't easy, but I found satisfaction in the work itself, knowing that my efforts were slowly creating something lasting. Meanwhile, Troy remained careless, spending recklessly and thinking that money alone gave him value. We rarely spoke outside of family gatherings, and the tension between us grew each time our inheritance was discussed. Arguments about money, responsibility, and who deserved what left scars that didn't fully heal. Even though we shared the same blood, it often felt like we were strangers, living in parallel worlds. He judged quickly, while I observed and planned carefully, letting my work speak for me instead of bragging. Despite the distance, the contrast between us was always clear. Troy believed life was about appearances, while I believed in building something real. That quiet determination, hidden from everyone else, became my strength and eventually the key to showing him who I really was. Troy grabbed my arm and led me into the grand hotel lobby, his grin wide as if he'd already planned the humiliation. I tried to keep my composure, but the moment he opened his mouth, all control slipped. He pointed at the key in my hand and sneered, "You actually booked that? That little old room? Are you serious?" I felt my face burn as he continued, loud enough for nearby guests to hear every word. His eyes sparkled with amusement while mine filled with a mix of anger and shame. Every insult he had ever thrown at me flashed through my mind, ridiculing my choices, my ambitions, even my personality. It all came rushing back, and suddenly this one small moment felt like the culmination of years of him trying to make me feel inferior. Guests glanced over, some whispering, some staring openly, and Troy only laughed harder. Each chuckle stabbed me deeper, making me wish I could disappear. I could hear the echo of his voice bouncing off the polished marble, turning what should have been a relaxing weekend into a public spectacle of embarrassment. For a moment, I considered snapping at him, but I realized that giving him the reaction he wanted would only fuel his amusement. Instead, I clenched my fists subtly, forcing myself to stay composed, even as my heart pounded. Behind Troy's smirk, I felt a quiet, burning determination building, one that would not show in anger, but in something far stronger. I took a deep breath and stepped back, forcing a calm expression while Troy continued his mocking. Inside, a storm raged that no one could see. Every laugh, every jab he threw reminded me of the countless times he had dismissed my ideas, my successes, and even my determination. Those memories, once bitter, now fueled a quiet fire within me. I told myself to stay still, to let him believe he had the upper hand. He thinks this is victory, I thought, but he has no idea what's coming. The satisfaction he sought from seeing me flustered would be short-lived, and I was already planning the moment it would turn entirely in my favor. Years of being underestimated, of quietly building something meaningful while he flaunted superficial wins, had prepared me for this. Each insult had planted seeds of patience and strategy, and now those seeds were growing into a plan. I felt a strange calm, a controlled intensity that made the anger useful rather than reckless. Troy's arrogance only sharpened my focus. While he believed he could dominate the moment with his loud voice and careless attitude, I realized that real influence was invisible until revealed at the right time. The thought of turning his confidence against him made my chest tighten with anticipation. I reminded myself that patience was my ally. This was no ordinary retaliation, it would be precise, undeniable, and unforgettable. The quiet rage that had built over years of being belittled was no longer just anger, it was the first spark of the revenge I had been waiting to execute. I stepped away from Troy, telling him I needed a moment to sort out the check-in. As I walked toward the reception, my mind was already racing, every detail of my plan falling into place. Once out of earshot, I picked up the phone and dialed the manager's private line. Carter answered immediately, his calm voice a welcome relief. He had been with the hotel for years and knew me better than anyone else in the staff. I didn't hesitate. "Carter, it's time," I said quietly. "You know everything about me, right? About the chain and how it came into my hands?" He chuckled softly. "Yes, Lena. I've been waiting for this moment with you." I explained again, in case there was any doubt, that I was the rightful owner of the hotel chain, the legacy passed down from my grandmother. Every word felt like laying the final stone of a foundation that had been quietly built over years. Carter listened carefully, nodding on the other end, his loyalty evident. "Leave it to me," he said. "I'll make sure this plays out exactly the way it should. Troy won't see it coming, but it will be clear to everyone else who's really in charge." Hanging up, I felt a surge of anticipation mixed with satisfaction. The groundwork was complete. Troy's arrogance and public display had set the perfect stage, and Carter would help me turn it into a moment that would leave him speechless. This wasn't about shouting or confrontation, it was about timing, subtlety, and the undeniable revelation of truth. Everything was ready. All that remained was the execution, and I knew the outcome would be far more satisfying than I could have imagined. While I stepped aside to handle what Troy believed was routine check-in, he kept his voice loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. He went on and on, tossing comments meant to paint himself as the accomplished one. He talked about deals he claimed to have made, trips he took, people he impressed, all with that familiar tone that suggested he thought the world revolved around him. Guests nearby shifted their attention toward him, some glancing my way with uncertainty, others exchanging curious looks. They sensed the strain between us, even if they didn't know the reason behind it. Troy fed on that attention, lifting his chin with pride each time he noticed another set of eyes turning toward him. His confidence only grew as he continued, convinced he was proving some sort of point. I stood a short distance away, pretending to remain focused on my task, but listening to every word. My silence made him more comfortable, more careless, more revealing of his inflated ego. The more he talked, the clearer my next steps became. I didn't need to respond or defend myself. His behavior was doing the work for me, setting the scene exactly as I needed it. Inside, I felt calm, almost steady, as if everything was unfolding according to a script I had written long before this moment. I watched him lean against the counter, laugh at his own remarks, and gesture dramatically as if putting on a performance for the entire lobby. He had no clue that the stage he enjoyed so much was about to shift beneath his feet. I let him continue, holding back every urge to cut in. The reveal would come soon, and when it did, it would speak for itself without me having to utter a single sharp word. While I stepped aside to handle what Troy believed was routine check-in, he kept his voice loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. He went on and on, tossing comments meant to paint himself as the accomplished one. He talked about deals he claimed to have made, trips he took, people he impressed, all with that familiar tone that suggested he thought the world revolved around him. Guests nearby shifted their attention toward him, some glancing my way with uncertainty, others exchanging curious looks. They sensed the strain between us, even if they didn't know the reason behind it. Troy fed on that attention, lifting his chin with pride each time he noticed another set of eyes turning toward him. His confidence only grew as he continued, convinced he was proving some sort of point. I stood a short distance away, pretending to remain focused on my task, but listening to every word. My silence made him more comfortable, more careless, more revealing of his inflated ego. The more he talked, the clearer my next steps became. I didn't need to respond or defend myself. His behavior was doing the work for me, setting the scene exactly as I needed it. Inside, I felt calm, almost steady, as if everything was unfolding according to a script I had written long before this moment. I watched him lean against the counter, laugh at his own remarks, and gesture dramatically as if putting on a performance for the entire lobby. He had no clue that the stage he enjoyed so much was about to shift beneath his feet. I let him continue, holding back every urge to cut in. The reveal would come soon, and when it did, it would speak for itself without me having to utter a single sharp word. Carter stepped closer to the center of the lobby, his voice carrying a firm, respectful tone. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the rightful owner of this hotel, Ms. Lena Harper." A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. Some guests clapped politely, unsure of what exactly had happened, while others murmured to each other, clearly taken aback. Eyes darted between Troy and me, searching for answers in the sudden shift of energy. Troy's face tightened as he realized the full weight of the announcement. He forced a laugh, shaky and strained, attempting to mask the shock and regain some semblance of control. But every glance from the surrounding guests, every whispered comment, told him that it was far too late to recover his dignity. I remained poised, letting the moment settle without any overt reaction. My satisfaction was quiet, almost hidden, but it ran deep. Every smirk Troy had worn earlier, every boast he had made, was now replaced with a stunned silence. The balance had shifted entirely, and for the first time, he experienced what it felt like to be powerless under someone else's authority. The murmurs continued as guests processed what had just occurred, and I could feel the subtle weight of validation settle in my chest. It wasn't just about proving him wrong, it was about showing that patience, careful planning, and quiet determination could achieve far more than arrogance ever could. Troy glanced at me again, his earlier confidence gone, replaced by a mix of disbelief and regret. Around us, the lobby buzzed with curiosity and respect, and I knew without a doubt that the situation had been resolved exactly as it should. Later, away from the curious eyes of the lobby, I led Troy into a quiet hallway. The hum of the hotel faded behind us, leaving only a tense stillness between us. I stopped and faced him, letting my presence fill the space. "I've tolerated your insults for years," I began steadily, "the jokes about my choices, the doubts about what I could accomplish. You never saw me, Troy, not really." My voice remained calm, but each word carried the weight of years of frustration and determination. "I've worked in silence, built something meaningful, and earned my place through effort, not empty boasting," I continued. "Perseverance matters more than appearances. Respect isn't demanded, it's earned, and self-respect comes from knowing your own worth, not from proving yourself to anyone else." He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. His usual confidence had evaporated, replaced by a rare vulnerability. For the first time, he seemed to see me clearly, not the sister he thought he knew, but someone he had consistently underestimated. "You never realized how serious I was about my goals," I added softly, "and now you see the result. I hope this teaches you that underestimating someone is the easiest way to watch them surpass you." Troy's eyes widened slightly, and he stepped back, as if he needed space to process what he had just heard. His arrogance was gone, replaced by silence and reflection. For the first time, I felt him acknowledge, without a word, how wrong he had been all these years. I left him there, still speechless, carrying the quiet truth of my hard-earned victories and the lessons he had failed to understand. I looked at Troy calmly, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make him uneasy. "You're welcome to stay as a guest while you're here," I said, my tone steady, "but remember who owns this place." He swallowed hard, his posture stiff, and for a moment, I could see the conflict in his expression. Pride battled with humility, but there was no denying the embarrassment creeping across his face. His usual ease and swagger had vanished, leaving only uncertainty and quiet shame. I didn't add another word or show any triumph in my expression. There was no smirk, no gloating, only a composed presence that made the contrast all the more striking. Around us, the hotel staff exchanged subtle glances, some barely containing smiles, silently savoring the poetic justice of the moment. Troy glanced around, aware of the attention yet powerless to alter the impression he had made. Every eye, even those not in his direct line of sight, seemed to register the reversal of roles. The tables had turned completely, and he felt it keenly, even if he couldn't voice it. I let him absorb the reality, letting the quiet authority in my voice linger. This wasn't about humiliation for its own sake, it was a lesson, a subtle but undeniable reminder that arrogance and disrespect could never outmatch patience, strategy, and quiet competence. By the time I turned back toward the lobby, Troy remained frozen, hesitant to move, caught in the aftermath of his own behavior. The power dynamic had shifted entirely, and while I made no show of it, the satisfaction ran deep and steady, hidden but unmistakable. After everything settled, I found a quiet corner of the hotel and let myself breathe. Watching Troy struggle with his own realization, I understood more clearly than ever that influence didn't need to be loud or flashy. True power worked in silence, revealed only when the time was right. I thought about the years of being dismissed, the moments when my abilities were questioned, and the countless times I was overlooked. None of that had been wasted. Every slight, every underestimation had shaped me, teaching patience, strategy, and the value of measured action. Now, seeing the results unfold without me raising my voice or forcing the moment, I felt the quiet satisfaction of justice served in its most effective form. It struck me how satisfying it was to let arrogance dismantle itself. Troy's own behavior had laid the groundwork for the moment, and I had only needed to position myself to witness it. There was no need for confrontation or recrimination, the natural outcome of his overconfidence was enough. For the first time in a long while, I felt the weight of closure. The tension from years of being underestimated, overlooked, and belittled lifted slightly, replaced by a calm certainty in my own worth. I realized that success and respect weren't things to demand, they were things that came quietly, earned through persistence and integrity. Sitting there, I let the lesson sink in. Patience, focus, and subtle strength could accomplish more than anger or showiness ever could. The victory was mine, not in spectacle, but in the undeniable truth that I had been underestimated for too long, and finally, that had ended. Troy finally gathered his things and stepped toward the exit, moving slowly as if each step reminded him of the day's events. His head was slightly bowed, his usual confidence nowhere to be found. There was a quiet gravity to his movements, as though he was replaying every detail of the morning in his mind, trying to understand how it had all slipped out of his control. I stayed back for a moment, letting him leave without interruption, and then began to walk through the lobby. Guests glanced my way, some offering polite nods or small smiles, others simply watching with curiosity and respect. I returned their attention with a subtle, composed smile, letting the acknowledgement of their admiration settle naturally without seeking it out. The atmosphere felt different now, lighter and more balanced. The tension that had hung over the space earlier was gone, replaced by a sense of order and quiet authority. As I moved through the lobby, I felt a profound sense of vindication, not from public recognition, but from knowing the truth of my own achievements and the respect they commanded. At the same time, there was a freedom in the air that I hadn't expected. Years of carrying the weight of underestimation and subtle doubt seemed to lift as I walked confidently, aware of the work I had done and the strength I had quietly shown. The day ended not with drama or spectacle, but with calm resolution. Troy's presence had faded, and the hotel felt like a space I fully owned, not just in title, but in authority, poise, and the satisfaction of having finally set the record straight. As I stood alone in the quiet of the lobby, a thought settled in my mind, heavy but clear: the ones we trust most can sometimes wound us in ways that leave lasting marks. Betrayal isn't always loud, it can be subtle, lingering in small doubts, sharp words, or dismissive gestures. Yet, those same wounds can teach resilience, shaping the way we move forward. I realized that patience had been my greatest ally. By waiting, observing, and planning carefully, I had turned what felt like weakness into a source of power. Every moment Troy had underestimated me, every insult he thought harmless, had quietly built the path to today's outcome. It was proof that careful, steady determination often carries a weight louder than any shout or display. Perseverance mattered more than immediate victory. I had chosen to act with purpose rather than impulse, allowing the situation to unfold naturally until the truth revealed itself. That was where the real triumph lay, not in confrontation, but in letting reality speak. To anyone listening, I would say this: don't discount the quiet ones. The ones who seem unnoticed, underestimated, or overlooked often hold more strength than you imagine. The moment may come when that calm, steady power surfaces in ways that leave everyone else stunned. Sometimes the deepest betrayals become the most powerful lessons. And sometimes, the quietest victories are the ones that matter most. Remember this: underestimating someone's resolve can be the biggest mistake anyone ever makes. Hey besties! Thanks for sticking with me till the very end of this emotional journey. Imagine being underestimated by someone closest to you, mocked for choices you made quietly, only to reveal your true strength and achievements later. That feeling of vindication, the calm triumph over arrogance, is unlike anything else. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more heartfelt tales. See you in the next one. Bye.